Well, now let's turn to something else that is affecting this country. Not one regulation, but a whole smorgasbord of different little regulations. Most perniciously recently, for example, Brighton Council demanding that so-called bee bricks, here they are, little bricks for bees, were installed in every new home. Well, recently it turned out that these bricks, unless they're replaced or thoroughly cleaned every few months, might actually be a death trap for bees, potentially a backfiring regulation there. Well, let's talk about the entire situation of little regulations in our country now with Arya Babu, the senior researcher and head of the Female Founders Forum at the Entrepreneurs Network. Welcome to the programme. First of all, can we talk about what on earth's going on with bee bricks in Brighton?
I think the issue is, and obviously this happens in Brighton, where people want to seem like they're doing big things that help the environment. So they come up with an idea and they say, yes, let's make sure everyone has to do this all the time, and then it becomes regulation.
And this regulation seems to, well, it was put on the sort of on the council. Thankfully, I think that council doesn't really build many houses, so potentially not the most expansive regulation in the world. But this is something that really could backfire.
It seems to be the case. Apparently, they kill bees, actively kill bees, which is the opposite of what they want to do. And they make very good homes for spiders. So it's the kind of thing that keeps happening.
But as you rightly say, this isn't the only regulation that we've seen befall this country recently. What are some of these other things that might seem small, but when they all add up, really stifle the freedom and innovative potential of the United Kingdom? There
are lots of these things. So if you look at the most recent budget, we had an online sales tax being proposed while also paying for businesses to get online more easily. Supermarkets are currently facing a lot of this sort of thing, where they have the grocery code to comply with, which means that they have more commitments to their suppliers than most other companies do. That might be fine. But on top of this, they're now going to have lots of rules about where they can store fatty foods in their supermarkets. So you can't put like cakes on the end of aisles and stuff. It's ridiculous. And then we've got really, really big things that are massive costs to companies, like the anti-modern slavery statements, gender pay gap reporting, and soon net zero impact assessments are going to come in for some companies. And these seem, on the surface, like they're good ideas, but they're just tick-box exercises for companies that take up a lot of the time of their workers and probably don't do anything, but it means the government can say that they're making moves on big and important issues.
So every single business needs to say that they have a modern slavery statement and have that on their website. I've seen that on so many websites and in companies that you really wouldn't think would need to be worrying. Are these just sort of cut and paste exercises that just take up time?
Basically, yeah. So the anti-modern slavery statements are meant to only impact large businesses, but because large businesses also hire and work with small companies, smaller companies also have to adopt these modern slavery statements. So I've spoken to a startup where they had like 10 people who were like in their 20s working in a WeWork, and they had to hire a lawyer to create an anti-modern slavery statement in order to sell something to a large fashion brand.
That's extraordinary. So we're seeing all of these little regulations really pile up and stifle potentially what could be a really innovative country. Post-Brexit, we need to be encouraging entrepreneurs. We need to be encouraging startups. How do we tackle this?
I think it's a really difficult problem to solve because while all of us are bothered by regulation and red tape in our daily lives, it's never anyone's biggest problem. So it's really difficult to form a political coalition that wants to say that we're going to actually deal with these issues. And every time you try and bonfire a regulation, what ends up happening is the small group of people who that regulation really affects start to become very vocal about it. So it's a very difficult problem to solve. And we've tried it with things like 1 in, 3 out forms, but it's very easy for civil servants to game that sort of thing. I'm actually a bit hopeless about what might happen.
Well, that is an incredibly depressing moment, but we'll have to leave it there. We've run to the end of the programme. But Arya Babu from the Entrepreneurs Network, thank you very much for joining us here this morning on The Briefing. A really fascinating issue and one that I hope we can return to at some point soon. Well, coming up